a presentation of Sertoba Media and Comey Media Incorporated.
I don't know who that guy is, but he's on the show today. When it comes to today's show, we got many things to talk about. Tom Brady makes his Fox debut during the UFL Championship. His arch nemesis, his best coach of all time, is dating a 24-year-old former cheerleader. All right. We got some more Chiefs players getting in trouble out here in these streets. The Falcons are finally punished for their tampering that they did this offseason. And there's some insider rumors that something's going on with Aaron Rodgers in his absence from Jets minicamp. All that and more on this edition of Total Football Talk. Welcome, one and all. It's that time again. We're back for Total Football Talk action. And this week we have a very special guest coming to the Total Football Talk airwaves for the first time. You've seen him on the In or Out Sports Debate. You've seen him with a lot of different projects that I've collaborated with, like Snowman in the Morning and several other things that he does out there to contribute to the sports media, especially with Belly Up Sports, Belly Up Media, and the many other contributions he makes, as well as to his main show, No Credentials Required, out here in these streams. Give it up for Ryan McCarthy. Welcome back, brother, to the airwaves with me.
Happy to be back on these streets and these streams with you, Drew.
There it is. There it is. You know somebody's watching when they already know one of my coined catchphrases. Well, not coined yet, but I'm working on it. But hey, it is something that we got to live by because we literally are floating out here in these streams right now. People who didn't watch last night's episode of D. Willie in the evening, you can see the unveiling from that hair to this hair right here. And again, if it gives you a magic trick like it just did for me, it went from this to this. That's like some Houdini-like stuff. But we'll talk about that on the season 2 finale next Sunday, where we discuss the whole journey of the hair, pictures, videos, and highlights from different shows throughout that time frame. But today, we are on Total Football Talk. Ryan's filling in for Cole today, as you'll see Cole tonight on the In or Out Sports Debate, episode 111. But to save my man from going 6 feet under, I didn't even want to try to get him to do 3 shows in one day. So Ryan is being a true legend today and filling in for another legend so we can have things going out here in these streams all day long, from morning to now afternoon to night. So Comey Media is busy today. You got Cole in the morning, you got this right now, and then if he shares it, you got the In or Out Sports Debate on there later tonight. But the most important thing is we got some great things in football to talk about on this show today. The UFL Championship was this past weekend. CFL second week was going on, and that's something that you know a lot about. You know, that's one reason why I definitely wanted to talk CFL with you today, because you are probably, besides Cole and I starting this show back, 42 weeks ago, you're the main person I knew before that talks CFL and a lot of it. So with that being said, you can help me out with breaking some things down out here. We also got some NFL action, but before all that, we got to take this into the open and drive.
All right, let's go. We got trips right at 42, 989 on two. Ready?
That's right. Here with the opening drive, we got to recap this past weekend and this past weekend's week 2 action. I saw the Toronto Argonauts have the week 2 bye, and that's something that, with this long of a season that CFL has, it's not your ordinary situation like the NFL where you just have one bye and then you play every other week. I mean, you play every week after that. Here you have multiple byes within a year because one, there's only 9 teams in the league. So it's like that odd duck. You got to have somebody on a bye each weekend. And this weekend, it was the Toronto Argonauts. And the first game that I want to talk about, I would say the Winnipeg Blue Bombers losing their second consecutive game, losing 23-19 to the Ottawa Redblacks, who had the week 1 bye. Drew Brown throws for 238 passing yards and 1 touchdown. Raquel Armstead, 16 carries, 95 yards, and then added 2 receptions for 1 yard. But don't get me started on how lack of production that was. Justin Hardy, 7 receptions, 111 yards, and a touchdown, along with Dominique Rhymes, 5 receptions for 60 yards, rounded out the main highlights from the receivers on that day. But the defense for the Redblacks was definitely rocking and rolling. 3 sacks, but the 2 interceptions by Alazo Adai and Adarius Pickett were definitely big contributions to why they were able to hold off for a 4-point victory. On the other side of the ball, Zach Collaros struggles again in the second consecutive week. 285 passing yards, 2 interceptions on the day. His 3rd interception in the first 2 games. On the ground, he added 1 carry for 4 yards, played like a total dumpster pelican this past weekend, I got to say, for old Collaros out there. Carrick Wheatfall, 3 receptions, 111 yards, and Nick Dembski's 3 receptions for 58 yards were highlights for that offense that added to a decent number of passing yards for Collaros, but the 2 turnovers what hurt them as they lost the game by 4 points. The Blue Bombers defense only had 2 sacks on the day and couldn't match the dominance on the Redblacks side of the ball for defense. When you put all this in perspective, watching this game from this past week, Thursday night football, what were your thoughts when it came to this game right here?
So I had a chance to watch it live. I was recovering from a cold. I was eating some hot ramen, got some noodles, got some good broth, a little bit of heat, so cleared up my sinuses so I can focus on this game. And look at this. I mean, Ottawa had control of the ball the majority of the first half until Winnipeg flipped the script towards the end of the second half. And the Redblacks, to their credit, took an older, more experienced, more battle-tested team and just dominated them, especially on defense. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers, their bread and butter has been offensive line play. This has been head coach Mike O'Shea's mantra since he was hired by the Blue Bombers back in, I think, 2016 when he first started, is to have a strong line on both sides of the ball, offensive line, defensive line. And that offensive line they're in trouble. They're in trouble this year. And I was watching the game and I was listening to the game afterwards. I listened to a little bit of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers post game a little bit afterwards, because hey, modern technology is awesome. Mm-hmm. And you can listen to different stations around the world. I was listening to the Blue Bombers feed of their post game, and they said it. They said this offensive line has not played to snuff, and for the first time since 2016, they're 0-2 in the hole. And that was the year they started. I think they started 1-6, went on a tear towards the end of the season. They had a 6-game winning streak, and they made the playoffs. But this, I think, if you looked at the last 2 games, the first 2 games of the season, they got roughed up by Montreal, who's a great defense. They got roughed up by Ottawa, who's playing their first game. Not only playing their first game, they're playing it in front of their home crowd. So it's a home opener for them. You're gonna come out flying. You gotta come out flying. You gotta hit your opponent in the mouth early, and they did. They did just that. They forced 2 interceptions from Zach Collaros, who doesn't throw that many interceptions, as you mentioned, Drew. He's already thrown 3 interceptions this year. So, if anything that's concerning for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, it's execution. They mentioned that. Coach O'Shea mentioned that. It doesn't help if there's a 45-minute delay because of lightning, with a little bit more than 3 minutes left in the game. That kind of took the momentum away from both sides, at least. And looking at this game, the Redblacks, I've got a good feeling about this Redblacks team. I got a good feeling about the Redblacks team. Now they need to clean up a couple things. They had 9 penalties for 105 yards. And you could also argue that the Blue Bombers were missing two quality contributors on offense. Brady Oliveira was out with a knee injury. Kenny the King Lawler was out with a leg injury, shoulder injury, shoulder injury. So Kolaris is missing a dependable dependable runner. Although Johnny Augustine did a great job filling in for Brady Oliveira, he's not the bell cow running back that Oliveira is. So he's missing that. So there's a little bit of it doesn't put the emphasis on the pass if you're missing your best running back, and it also doesn't help that your best wide receiver is also out of the game. So you got to depend on other targets, and you got Dalton Jones, you got Brad Wolotarski. They're two dependable veteran targets. And as you might have mentioned, Kerry Wheatfall, the rookie, 3 receptions, 111 yards. One of those receptions was a big reception that led to a touchdown by the former NFLer Chris Strebler. But this was a tale of two teams. Ottawa's young, they're hungry. I'm starting to wonder if Drew Brown has another great game, if the Redblacks have found their answer at quarterback after going through so many guys over the last couple of years. Jeremiah Masoli, poor Jeremiah Masoli. He's on the 6 game. He's already on the 6 game injured list, and he gets run into during this game, and he's hurt again. That guy can't catch a break. The poor dude. But overall, this game was entertaining. I play the game. Let's go back to what you mentioned about Justin Hardy. He's been on my radar since last year. He emerged last year as the premier receiver for the Redblacks, and he's continuing that. And he has great chemistry with Drew Brown. And the best play of the game came with 57 seconds left. Damon Webb knocks away what looked like a sure touchdown pass to Dalton Schoen. Knocks it away, force a third down. They force the third down conversion. They force it back to they get the ball back, run out the clock for the safety, give minimal time to the Blue Bombers, and fade out complete. Game over. Redblacks 1-0, and Winnipeg slips to 0-2.
So, I find this pretty interesting because the Redblacks have been towards the bottom of their division for the past few years. They've been, past few years, they've been in the bottom of the East Division, like next to last or last in the past few years, right? The Winnipeg Blue Bombers have been first in the West Division for the past 3 years. Now, and that possibly longer than that, but my research numbers only went back through 2021. So, but the whole point of that is the Blue Bombers have been a really good team over these years. The Redblacks, not so much. For your prediction this early after 2 weeks, we got a long season. We've once the UFL season started, we've got football to the end of the year, which is phenomenal for those of us who love football, who are fanatics for football. Who do you think between these two teams by the end of the CFL season will have a good chance to compete for the Grey Cup after the way they've started these first 2 weeks? I mean, the Redblacks only 1 game in, but then you got the Blue Bombers who have been at the top of their division in the West Division for several years, and now they're 0-2 starting out. Can they bounce back from this and end this season on a good note, potentially contend for a Grey Cup?
I think they do. I think Winnipeg does, based on the fact that this team's been around together, each other forever. Since 2019, they won their first Grey Cup together in 2019. Mike O'Shea's been building this team. And you got a bunch of veteran guys who say, yeah, this is our culture. This is our culture here. We expect to win every single game. And they've done it since 2019. They did it in 2019. They won the Grey Cup. 2020, we all know what happened there. 2021, shortened season. They win a Grey Cup again. They come back to the Grey Cup for 4 straight seasons. They've been in the Grey Cup game. I expect this team to learn from their mistakes. They have. And they've done that over the last 6 or 7 years they've been together. Now, there might come a point where I think they had their come to Jesus moment after this week. and they turned things around. They got believe what's they got this week? They got BC this week. That's gonna be a tough
British
test.
Columbia.
The British Columbia Lions. That's gonna be a tough test, especially what they did on 50-cent night this past weekend.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to that here in a second. And I mean, the Lions, they're not 0-2 like the Blue Bombers. They have, the Blue Bombers, I feel like, have a lot more to lose at this point because, if you lose a third straight game, that's definitely not going to be an easy thing to come back from. I mean, we've seen teams go 0-4. I mean, look at the UFL and what happened the year prior. And you have a team that starts out 0-4 and then turns it around. Or no, they were 0-6. They finished the season 4-6 and still somehow made it to the championship game. And that is the Arlington Renegades and won the championship with a 4-6 regular season record. He tried to do something similar this year. Didn't quite work out because you had the Birmingham Stallions in the league, which we'll touch up on that when we get to the UFL Championship. But back to CFL, the way it's structured and the way things are, I'm saying right now, if the Blue Bombers lose this weekend to the Lions, which we'll get to that game here in a little bit, I don't think that they have any shot of winning the Grey Cup this year. And it'll be interesting to look back on this episode at the end of the CFL season and see where they stand at that point. Before we go to the next game, I want to acknowledge some comments right here. Playmakers in the house saying Total Football Talk with Fresh Cut Drew and Ryan McCarthy, says the playmaker out here in these streams. Welcome back to the show, brother, for tuning in. We appreciate you. And I'm going to tune into Monarchs of Wrestling tonight. We got inter-house sports debate starting a little bit earlier tonight because Cole's going to be on there, but we'll cover that a little bit more before the end of this show. Sick Dicky has some things for me to read as this edition of Total Football Talk is brought to you by Sleazeball Meaty Subs, Ragin' Cajun Subs. Feel the burn, taste the spice. Keep enjoying the subs. And Godsmack Thirst Quencher. It isn't just good, it's Godsmacking great. Hopefully I did good reading those because I am not Cole Johnson, but I do an okay job out here in these streets.
Shout out to Boston, Massachusetts. Godsmack.
Definitely a good shout out to that. And, we covered the first game of the CFL Week 2 action. And I want to take this to, some two teams here between the Calgary Stampeders and the BC Lions, which I felt this was a very underwhelming performance by the Stampeders. And, the BC Lions just capitalized on it right here. I mean, they did so at home. You got Vernon Adams Jr. throwing for 277 passing yards and 2 touchdowns, adding 4 carries on the ground for 16 yards and a touchdown as well. Got William Stanback, 15 carries, 69 yards. Doesn't score any touchdowns, but the contribution did help, mix things up to where they could get the play action pass and some other things working within that offense. Alexander Hollins is a benefit of that, getting 8 receptions for 97 yards and a touchdown, along with Justin McGinnis, 4 receptions, 91 yards, and a touchdown. Those were the 2, passing touchdowns by Vernon Adams to those 2 receivers right there. The Lions defense, 4 sacks, along with 1 interception by Ben Hadalk. I guess that's how you say his name. Correct me when we get back to that, but I probably just butchered the blank out of his name, but I did the best I could. Jake Meyer on the other side for the Stampeders did what he could, 339 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. It wasn't the performance that really turned the tide for this game to say that it took the chances of the Stampeders winning away from them, because Dedrick Mills also 11 carries, 46 yards, and 6 receptions for 99 yards were the highlight parts for the offense. But what is the thing that really made the difference here and why the Lions won the game, in my opinion? Stampeders defense absolutely sucked, as they had 0 sacks and 0 forced turnovers for the entire game. With all that being said, Ryan, what are your thoughts for this game? Did they just really absolutely suck on defense? Was this the reason why they lost this game, being the Stampeders?
Yeah, if you can't get to the quarterback and you can't force any turnovers, you're not going to win. You're not going to win unless there's some miracle that you stop your opponent on points. And they didn't do that this time. They had pretty good performance week before against Hamilton, against their old buddy Bo Levi Mitchell, who we'll talk about in a couple of minutes. But you got to press the issue. You got to press the issue on defense. You got to sack the quarterback. You got to put pressure on the quarterback. And anytime Calgary did put pressure on the quarterback, Vernon Adams Jr. got out of it. And it also doesn't hurt to have 53,000 fans in front of you. Played 53,000 fans, and that crowd was definitely on the BC Lions side. Sure, having 50 Cent put the pregame show to a pregame concert, yeah, that definitely helps. That brings the fans and attracts the fans, but also what attracts the fans is winning football. And you got to hand it to Rick Campbell. Ever since he got hired by the BC Lions in 2023, after the 2022 season, he's done a great job putting together a pretty dynamic squad. They bring in Vernon Adams at the trade deadline a couple years ago. He's been the big difference maker, although there's sometimes Vernon Adams Jr., you don't know which one you're going to get. You don't know which version of Vernon Adams you're going to get. Either he's going to be dynamic, throw a lot of yards like he did in this game, and not have any turnovers, or he's going to be a turnover machine. He's going to be the local bakery and be a turnover machine. This game, he was outstanding. Got out of the pocket, make some plays to his wide receivers. Also had a rushing touchdown in this game. So yeah, that was that's a big difference in this game. Vernon Adams' performance was he made Calgary's defense look as bad as the stat sheet had said on their side of the ball. No turnovers. No first turnovers, no sacks. You're not going to win any games doing that.
Absolutely. I mean, it was just an atrocious game to watch on the defensive side of the ball. And, the Stampeders, they've not been performing well over the past few years. I mean, you look at what they did last year, 6-12 record overall. The year before that, they were a little bit better. They were 12-6. They flip-flopped their record, that year prior, but they were still in the middle of the Western Division as the Blue Bombers, a team that we talked about last game, have been leading that division for several years. This Stampeders team, a team that Brett the Hitman Hart is a fan of. Okay, you and I both, we know our wrestling. Okay, and we can talk about that.
Of course you do. I see those belts behind you, man.
There it is. Yeah, you got the Sartoba Media Championship right there behind me. That beautiful big sexy belt. Shout out to my guys over at Championship Culture who custom made that for yours truly. There's a lot of microphones inside that. You can't really tell, but all this is like little mini microphones all up in here. It's like it's kind of like how a tattoo is. Like when you have like a sleeve or half sleeve, there's certain things that are in there to deter the eye that you don't quite catch it at first, but you look at it real close and then you can tell what it is. That's basically what it is. So from afar, it's a regular looking championship, but it's got some custom stuff. You got me all hyped about that now. But back to this. The Calgary Stampeders. Brett the Hitman Hart, fan of this team. I don't think he's a fan of the way they've been playing, though, for quite some time. They have been playing very underwhelmingly, especially when you think about the history of this franchise right here. Is there any way that this team, in your opinion, throughout this season can improve from their 6-12 record last year and have a chance to contend during this playoffs, the 2024 playoffs?
Boy, that's a big ask. That's a big ask. I don't know. Edmonton's improved, although the record doesn't reflect that they've improved. Saskatchewan, 2-0. We'll talk about them in a few minutes, but their Corey Mace has them playing great ball the first 2 weeks of the season. Winnipeg is who they are. If Winnipeg takes a step back, and Calgary might follow, and you got BC who is in the mix. They were the mix last 2 seasons, going to the West Division final. If Calgary doesn't pick things up, I think they're in a load of trouble. I think a big piece of it is the fact that Malik Henry, their best wide receiver. Yes, there are 2 Malik Henrys in football. There's the quarterback from Last Chance U, and there's also the wide receiver from Calgary. Last year, he tore his Achilles tendon, was out all last year, comes back, then he tears his ACL in training camp or during the preseason, and he's lost for the season. He's lost for the year. So your best target outside of Reggie Bagleton, your secondary target, is not playing. So you got to rely on your run game. You got to rely on Jake Mayer, who had 339 yards, but still threw an interception. So we don't know, just like Vernon Adams, we don't know which version of Jake Mayer we're going to get. And the fact that they moved on from Bo Levi Mitchell after the 2022 season, they tend to do that. They're very, John Hufnagel is very Bill Belichick in his methodology. You develop talent, and when they start to get too good, or they want to rise, they want a paycheck, they want to get a paycheck, they go somewhere else. You've seen little bits of Calgary Stampeders on. You see them on Toronto. You see them on Montreal. They go to the East and they get a nice paycheck, and they develop all over again. So they've been consistent, but this team, it's going to depend on the quarterback play. I think Jake Mayer, he's a good quarterback, but I don't know if he's the guy to take them over the top. And you had Bo Levi Mitchell for so long. Now he's in the sunset of his career in Hamilton. Jake Mayer, it's going to depend on Jake Mayer. It's going to depend on how Jake Mayer plays. He plays good enough to win, and he can rely on his run game, which his run game got taken out a little bit this game. It's going to depend on him, and if you leave it up to him, Calgary's in trouble. And it's then the possibility of them missing the playoffs for the first time, and I can't even remember the last time they missed the playoffs. We'll do some live research on that.
Dedrick Mills, the running back for the Stampeders, is very inconsistent in my opinion, especially watching him over the past 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
He's not somebody that I feel like is going to be like their star to help carry the load. And especially if they want to transition into a team that you kind of have to be, where you mix things up. You can't just rely on your quarterback's arm. You can't be doing a dink and dunking passes, little screen passes 5 yards. You have to be able to run the ball, and you have to be able to establish that run, because averaging 1.7, 2.4 yards, whatever it is per carry, is not going to get it done. You need to, in order to be a somewhat of a relatively successful team, your running backs, or at least your star running back, your starter, needs to average 4 to 5 yards per carry minimum. And that's if you can average 5 yards per carry on 2 runs, you get first downs. So, looking at it in that aspect alone, you have to be able to do that. And the best teams out there don't have quarterbacks that necessarily throw for 250, 300, and 400 yards in a game. You have it to where you have running backs that are running for 75 to 100 yards with a quarterback that's just barely passing for 200, but doesn't turn the ball over. And that's what the Stampeders team needs to get to if they have any chance of improving from the previous 6-12 record.
Yeah, I just did the research, and I'll give you I'll let you guess, Drew. When was the last time the Calgary Stampeders missed the Grey Cup playoffs?
I can't answer that. I'm not that factual with the lead to be able to answer
that. All
right. I'm just being honest.
That's okay. 2004.
Holy crap! 20 years.
So they are 20 years.
So would it be safe to compare them to the New England Patriots of the NFL and their 20-year run?
I think it would be safe, because John Hufnagel worked for the New England Patriots. He knows the Belichick way. He was the guy who helped develop Tom Brady as a quarterback.
Job.
Yeah. Yeah. So Hufnagel working the Belichick way. We saw what happened with Belichick last 2 seasons. Yeah, you have to wonder if this is going to happen. This is going to be the same thing's going to happen in Calgary with John Hufnagel.
Oh, that's a really good question. Yeah, that is. You got me my gears spinning, thinking that we could be seeing some ousting now. So, how many Grey Cups does he have in that time period?
John Hufnagel.
That's something that I'm interested in now, because I wonder if he'll get that same kind of treatment that the hoodie got on his way out the door in New England, if they will basically mutually part ways, or if he doesn't have as much of an established career that where they're just going to just boot him out. I don't know, because the hoodie at least was able to be let go respectfully. In this case, I'm just wondering how many Grey Cups he has in comparison. I mean, it's the Super Bowl of the CFL. So,
as a player, he won 2. As a coach and as team president, he's won 3.
Okay, so
but they're consistent.
We can call him the half hoodie.
Half hoodie.
The half hoodie, because he's got half the championships. And the hoodie also had to not as a player, but as an assistant coach. So I guess that you can compare that. That makes him the half hoodie. That's what that from now on, when we talk Calgary Stampeders rest of the year, I mean, not Cal, when we talk this team rest of the year right here, I'm going to be calling him half hoodie. It's just how it's happening for the rest of the year. If anybody gets offended, let me know here in the comments, and I'll do my best to work with that. But with that being said, we still have 2 more games to cover for this CFL Week 2. This next game was a little bit more interesting. I'm not really a fan of the home team's name. I miss calling them the Edmonton Eskimos. Can you at least, before we cover this game, because I've been wondering this, but I keep forgetting to research it, but I know that you probably know the answer. Why did they go from the Edmonton Eskimos to the Elks to begin with? It's stupid. I don't agree with the name. I don't like it.
Because it's the same as anything that happened in 2020 when they changed the Washington commit. They call it now the Washington football team, and the Cleveland Indians became the Cleveland Guardians. Corporate pressure. It's corporate pressure.
I mean, I understand the Commanders and the Washington football talk. I know Washington football talk. The Washington football team.
That's the gridiron football report right there.
There it is. It's your bing for the day, Kyle Nash. Bing. But hey, I miss calling them, Washington team of football, WTF, because I like that name better than the Commanders. I understand. Am I a fan of it? No, we've circled back through that several times. But for this team right here, I still don't understand how that's anywhere close to what the Washington, formerly known as the REDSKINS, in the name change that needed to happen there. Now, if you are going to change it, this is a very similar situation to that, to where if you're going to change it, at least change it to a good name. And both teams that we just talked about did not do a great job with that. Like when you get traded or signed or drafted by the Elks, it's not really as exciting as getting drafted by a team with the name with my favorite team name and the Roughriders. Okay. Mm-hmm. That is my favorite team right now. And I'm going to talk about that more in a minute when we get to the game of the week. But for this right here, I have to say, between the Montreal Alouettes and the Edmonton Elks, it was a pretty good game overall. It was not like the game that we just talked about a couple minutes ago. This one was definitely interesting. It was not a snooze fest like in the previous matchup. As Cody Fajardo for the Montreal Alouettes had 269 passing yards and 2 touchdowns, along with 4 carries for 27 yards. Walter Fletcher added 12 carries for 82 yards and a touchdown, along with 3 receptions for 61 yards and a receiving touchdown. Kayon Julian Grant had 6 receptions for 89 yards. Big thing here is the Alouettes defense came through big with 3 sacks on the day and 2 interceptions by Nafiz Lyon and Kabian Into. Their kicker, David Cote, definitely contributed as well. 1-on-1 on field goals. It's not a big stat, but that one field goal was for 53 yards and was the difference maker in this game when you look at the final score, because they only won by 3 points. Was it the final score that they had? No. Had he missed that field goal, they might not have been in the opportunity to win the game in the fourth quarter. So putting all that in perspective, have to give a shout out to the kicker, and they don't get enough love on special teams. But you watch this show, you definitely see Cole and I have been giving love to Jake Bates of the UFL, and now I'm giving love to this guy right here for doing his job for the Alouettes. As you look at McLeod Bethel Thompson on the other end of it for a team that has a terrible name in the Elks, threw for 300 in passing yards, for 2 interceptions. Those 2 interceptions definitely made a big difference, along with the 1 carry for 8 yards that he had. The Elks running backs without Bethel Thompson's 8 yards. And this is kind of like a repeat from last week because it was actually a worse stat line, but it was still bad enough for me to include it in this week's slate. The Elks running backs without Bethel Thompson combined had 14 carries for 64 yards. I mean, it's not as bad as last week, but that number needs to improve. Like we were talking about earlier, your running back core should be averaging 75 to 80 plus yards per game in order to give you a chance to win. Now, because they weren't that far below that stat line, I believe, in my opinion, that's why the game was as close as it was, because they were doing a much better job at establishing the run than they did the week before. And it's like you had said earlier, the Edmonton Elks have improved from where they were to where they are now. It's not their name. Their name still sucks. But other than that, everything else is pretty good. Curly Gittens Jr. also adds 7 receptions for 93 yards on the day, and Dylan Mitchell's 5 receptions, 61 yards. They did a decent job with mixing it up there, but it just wasn't enough to get the Elks a victory. Along with their defense having 3 sacks, they again didn't play like slouches throughout this game. They just need to establish the run a little bit better, in my opinion. Am I on point with that thought process for this Elks team as far as they need to continue to increase the demand for the run and to improve there? Or is there something else that I'm not stating that you're seeing that they need to work on if they want to have a chance to continue to elevate their game throughout the 2024 season?
Well, I don't think the running game was the fact that I don't think it was the Elks, or let's compromise. We'll call them the Elkamos. How about that?
There it is. I like it. I'm going with that. I like it. We're going to call them that from now on for the rest of the season.
The Elkamos. I'm not sure if it was just the fact that they were having trouble establishing a running game. I think the fact that Montreal's run defense was just that solid that night. And I'm going to give you a name here. He might sound familiar to you as a UFL fan or XFL fan or a UFL fan. Darnell Sankey, once of the Arlington Renegades, was part of that championship team. Joined the Montreal Alouettes on September 11th, 2023. Their record since Darnell Sankey joined them is 10-0. 10-0. That's how big of a difference that Darnell Sankey has meant to this defense. And yes, they have Noel Thorpe, who's one of the best defensive coordinators in the CFL. They brought in Sean Lemon, who's still appealing his suspension for gambling. He's appealing so he can still play. He's been a big difference. Those two guys have been the biggest difference on the Montreal Alouettes defense. And to have those guys in that lineup, neutralizing the run like they did in this game, they took away the run game. They did it against Winnipeg. They did it against Edmonton. That run defense is going to be huge. If they keep up this pace, they could be pretty unstoppable. I'm not saying they're going to have a perfect record. My biggest worry is that they'll wind up 16-2 like the Toronto Argonauts did last year, and they get absolutely throttled in the Eastern Final last year by the same Montreal Alouettes. So having those two guys in there, and also you got ball hawks in the secondary as well. KB Anento was huge last year, and especially late in the season into the playoffs. Had a couple interceptions during the postseason last year. Had an interception in this game. So you got guys who are ball hawks in the secondary. You got guys who could stop the run up front. This defense is playing so well. And again, Montreal is 10-0 with these two guys in their lineup, with Sankey and Lemon in their lineup. They are 10-0 since September 11th, 2023. Now, there's no guarantee that this run's going to last. Next week they're playing Ottawa next week, and that's going to be a big test for both teams. Let's see if Ottawa can keep their sustained pressure, they're sustained with their offense. Let's see if Montreal can counterattack with that outstanding defense. But going back to my main point, I think the Montreal's run defense is just that good of a unit that they only allow 64 rushing yards on 14 attempts combined without McLeod Bethel-Thompson, who had 1 carry for 8 yards. This is just a solid defense.
It definitely is. And it's definitely, it was great to watch for the most part. I'm just big on establishing the run no matter what, phases we're watching between NFL, UFL, CFL. Before I get a little bit more into that, I want to give a shout out to a few people who made some comments throughout, what we were just talking about. My man Dylan's in the house saying, "Sup, Drew?" Sup, Dylan? Appreciate you tuning in. We got a lot of football. We're going to talk about your Jaguars here in a little bit too. So as you saw with that graphic there, we got to talk about old Trevor Lawrence. We'll get to that here in a little bit. Mickey Delaney's in the house saying hi, Brian, and hi, Drew. Well, Mick, appreciate you coming in and tuning into some total football talk today. As
the
we
comment
got
police is here.
The comment cop, yes, is in the house. Ike is here and says, "Yo." Well, Ike, we appreciate you. Keep it on lock, or the comment cop will come after you out here in these streams. Being Mickey Delaney. And if you're tuning in for the first time, no matter if you're watching through Twitch, X, formerly known as Twitter, what else is streaming on? YouTube, and other stuff that is going to stream to you later. Make sure you subscribe now and never miss out on new content. And Ike also says, I dig El Camos with a Z.
With a Z.
Ike, when Cole's back next week, say that again. And then I want Cole to say it on the air. And then we get a clip out of it and put it in a commercial. That is my goal. If for Cole to say with a Z one more time, because it's been a while since I've heard it.
It has been a while.
Yes, I miss it. But with that being said, gone through those games right there. The Elkamos are doing it. But they're not doing it enough as they fell just short. But like you said, they have improved a lot from where they were, when they changed from the Eskimos to the Elks. And if they listen to us, they will soon change it back to a half and half, but be the Elkamos. And right here, we have now something to get to that involves the team with my favorite name in the CFL. And we have to take it to the game of the week right here. Let's unzip this thing up, bring it down as we talk about the Saskatchewan Roughriders. I love that name. It is my favorite team in the CFL, and they're undefeated right now, and for a good reason. They played the Hamilton Tiger Cats this past weekend. It was the last game of the weekend. And the one thing I really like about the CFL that I think the NFL needs to think about is having not just all the games mainly between the course of a couple of days. The CFL spreads it out to where you have, even though there's only 4 games in a week, you have a Thursday night game, a Friday night game, a Saturday night game, and a Sunday night game. This way, you have the opportunity for everybody to watch every single game who's a fan of Canadian football, okay? Now, I've seen the games mainly on TSN, which is not like a big broadcasting channel, but, you can still have access to the games. And in this game right here for the game of the week, it was this past Sunday night. It was last night, and you can go back and watch it if you haven't seen it. They do play replays on TSN. I believe there is a replay of it tonight or tomorrow. In this game is the one you want to go back and watch, in my opinion. High-scoring contest, a lot of yards in production by both teams here to where it was back and forth throughout this contest and even into the fourth quarter. As Trevor Harris for the Roughriders, 390 passing yards for 2 touchdowns. The most surprising stat, though, is that we have a team that wins a game and they had very, very lackluster running game, a very, very lackluster running game in the entirety of it. And this is in comparison to all 8 teams that played this weekend. However, they still found a way to pull it off here at the end of the game as they had 33 rushing yards on 12 attempts. But the touchdown by Shea Patterson made a huge difference into why they, won this game, because they won by 3 points. And without that rushing touchdown, we wouldn't be talking about this like this on this day. Jareth Stern, 6 receptions for 112 yards, had a decent game in the week 1 action. And now in week 2, he's been a highlight of the receiving corps for the past 2 weeks, along with Keon Schaefer-Baker, 7 receptions and 109 yards, and hauls in the 2 touchdowns that were thrown by Trevor Harris that make a big difference on this day. The Roughriders defense, biggest stat line for them, an interception by C.J. Avery. However, that's his 2nd consecutive week with an interception. So when you think about that, he's been a big dynamic force for that team, and I would say a big difference maker into why they are currently undefeated to start the first 2 weeks. Brett Lawther, this is the stat right here that truly, I think, made the biggest impact for the Roughriders today because of their lackluster running game, is the fact that their kicker, Brett Lawther, had 4 completed field goals on 4 attempts for 49 yards. And that was his long on the day. But that 49-yard field goal was a big difference maker in that game. Someone that you talked about earlier that's still getting it done out here in these streets and on these fields, that's Bo Levi Mitchell, 380 passing yards for 3 touchdowns and interception, along with 3 carries for 36 yards. Old man's getting it done out there on that gridiron. Keandre Smith, another consecutive week with a big impact, 6 receptions, 119 yards and a touchdown, along with Stephen Dunbar's 3 receptions for 73 yards and a touchdown. And Shamar Bridges, 6 receptions for 72 yards and a touchdown, combined for all 3 of the touchdowns thrown by Bo Levi Mitchell. The Hamilton Tiger Cats defense, though, 4 sacks in the day and couldn't really force any turnovers into that aspect. You know, when you put all that together, you really think about the way this game went this past weekend, this past Sunday. And my favorite name again, the Saskatchewan Roughriders, getting the win in this game. What are your thoughts putting all that together?
Yeah, this was clearly the fun game of the weekend. And I watched most of it, listened to some of it at the end as I was getting ready for to retire for the evening. I caught the highlights this morning of the game, and the last pass by Mitchell, it bounced out of the hand of Shamar Bridges, took you back to 2021 Grey Cup. It took me back to the 21 Grey Cup when that last interception that ended the game, it bounced out of the hands out of the receiver, out of the Masoli throws a pass, it bounces out of the hands of his receiver, winds up in the hands of the opposing team. It was game over there. And you feel bad. You feel for the Hamilton Tiger Cats, but this game was a shootout, and it was enjoyable. It was such a joy to watch. 2 old quarterbacks, Bo Levi Mitchell, I think 36, 37 years old. Trevor Harris, 38, 39 years old. 2 veterans going head to head in a shootout. It was such fun to see. Such fun to see. And Jared Stearns having a big reception to keep a drive alive, which led to Schaefer Baker's second touchdown. And Brett Father and Lawther, 4 field goals, baby, including the game winner at the death to win the game for Saskatchewan. We talked about Corey Mace coming in and kind of changing things around as a head coach. He's got this team believing. Last year, if they went down, they were down as many as 13 in this game, and they went up storming back and they went up winning the game. Last year under Craig Dickinson, I don't think he could say the same thing. Corey Mace has this team believing. They're 2-0 to start the season. They put a beat down on Edmonton the week before. They come back, they claw their way back, no pun intended, because of Tiger Cats. They claw their way back into this game, down 13 to win it. Their defense forces turnovers. Although I was a little bit worried in the beginning of the game, or not throughout the game, excuse me. That secondary was getting burnt. They were the Eli Apple of the CFL. They were getting burnt throughout this game. But they put their heads back together. They screwed their heads back on straight, and they wound up actually getting the turnover that was the difference maker in this game, which led to the game-winning field goal. So, got to hand it to the Corey Mace and your Saskatchewan Roughriders there, Drew, for staying in it and winning this game. Now they're 2-0.
For your Brett father-in-law comparison right there, I got to give you the Charlie Murphy. The take was so good during it, I did not want to cut you off, which is why I waited for Charlie Murphy to slide it in afterwards. But that was great, and I'm gonna find a way to work that in if he continues to have success, like Jake Father and Bates, the UFL and the Michigan Panthers. Okay, but this right here, it was not a pretty game as far as, again, like with their running game, but like you had, basically said, coming back from what I was saying, the kicking game, I mean, the special teams and Brett father-in-law there, that he did his job, 4 field goals in the day, usually on average, because there's a lot of games where we watch football and the field goal kicker is only called on for extra points because whether it's the offense is doing well enough to where they don't need them or they're struggling enough to where they can't get the ball into that side of the field to even be in position to kick a field goal based on his limitations, whether they're short or long, depending on the strength of his leg. All that in comparison, you don't really see kickers kicking for 4 field goals plus. I mean, Rene Paredes did the week before with 6 and 6 for field goals.
Yep.
But in this case right here, for them to win the game based on the fact that you have a kicker that had more than 2 and doubling that to 4 field goals, and especially for that lengthy one right there, I got to give him credit where it's due. When you look at other, talents in podcasting and personalities like Pat McAfee is going to throw a lot of love for special teams. But outside of that, you really don't see a lot of, networks praising the special teams. But here on Total Football Talk, you got a glimpse of it. You've seen it before with watching it, and now with being a part of it today. You know that Cole and I do not hold back with talking about the special teams.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what makes the CFL so unique compared to the NFL, compared to the UFL, compared to indoor and arena football, is that the kicking game is so vital to the success of your team. Because even if you don't miss if you miss the field goal, you go for a long field goal, you miss it wide right, you have the chance to get a point out of it. Or flipped around, if you miss a field goal, your team has a chance to get back for a touchdown. So that's what makes the CFL so unique. That's what makes special teams so crucial. And give all the love. I give all the love to special teams as well, because there's such a missed aspect of the game itself, and that's why it's so crucial to the CFL.
Absolutely. It's going to be interesting to see how things pan out for the rest of this season, including a team I have adopted as my favorite based on the name. I've said it multiple times before, and I'm going to say it one more time while I have the chance. The Saskatchewan Roughriders is my team that I love in the CFL. I just need them to do their job and improve their running game, because if not, it's going to be a long season. And they are not a team that's really known for dominance, out here. They do okay. I mean, last year, they were 6-12 like the Stampeders. They had a mediocre season. The year before that, 6-12. But the year before that, in 2021, they did okay. They were 9-5. It was the last time they had a winning record, because you've got your boy hype on the fact that team name is awesome. I'm going to start a movement to inspire them to not suck anymore, so that way they can contend for the Grey Cup. The Saskatchewan Roughriders.
I didn't tell you who my team was, man.
Who are they?
The Montreal Alouettes. And I'll tell you why.
What?
So
it's not like the Kermit the Frog story, is it?
No, it's not Kermit the Frog story. No, it ain't Kermit the Frog. But I'll show you the shirt I'm wearing right now. Baltimore Stallions. All right. The Baltimore Stallions, the first and only USA-based CFL team to ever win the Grey Cup. Now, when the Baltimore Browns, as it were, back in 1995, announced that they were moving from Cleveland to Baltimore, the Stallions needed a home. Enter Montreal. Move back to Montreal, rebrand as the Alouettes. They play at Olympic Stadium until they run into a conflict with U2. They moved over to Percival Molson Stadium on the campus of McGill University. They've played there ever since. But my team, because Montreal's closest to where I live in Saratoga, New York, I can just hop up there. If I want to see a game, I'll hop up 3.5 hours, go to a game. Bob's your uncle. But that's my team, Montreal Alouettes. The last, America's team, baby. It's America's team. The last US CFL team. And the only CFL-based, United States-based team to ever win a Grey Cup.
That's really interesting, because I'll admit, 95, I wasn't crapping Huggies or anything at that point. I was old enough at that point. I mean, I was like, 8. I was way out of Huggies by then. But my point is that I wasn't really watching football like we are now, in 95. So I didn't even know anything. You just gave me a nice fact check for today for that. Now, this for S&Gs, before you move on. How many US-based teams were there in the CFL at one point? Because I didn't even know that was a thing. I mean, that's something I just learned today.
Yeah. They started in 93 with the Sacramento Gold Miners, which later moved to San Antonio to become the San Antonio Texans. There was the Las Vegas Posse, which is where Anthony Calvillo played for the first couple of years of his career. The Memphis Mad Dogs, the Birmingham Barracudas, the Shreveport Pirates. Wild story with their ownership. You gotta check that out. It's called the Great Tucker Caper. If you want to read a wild story about ownership of the CFL at the time. And the only coach in history of Las Vegas Posse. It was Ron Meyer of old SMU and New England Patriots fame. Yeah. And actually, I had Jeff Reinbold, who's a longtime CFL coordinator. He's now with the University of Hawaii, a special teams coordinator. I had him on No Crunchers Required. Ding! Back in the day, about a couple of years ago, talking about his career, and he has a really great story about Ron Meyer. So it's some wild stuff in Las Vegas. But there, I think, let's see, Sacramento, San Antonio, Las Vegas, Shreveport, and of course the Baltimore Stallions. Memphis, Birmingham. So they're about 8 teams in the United States that were CFL teams.
But it doesn't sound like they lasted too long.
No, Sacramento lasted 2 seasons. The other teams lasted 2 seasons as well. So,
ouch.
But the Montreal Alouettes are a remnant of the last and only team to play in the United States as a CFL team.
So when Baltimore won in 95, were they out of the league the following year?
They relocated to Montreal because of the NFL coming in
96. So they were literally the reigning champions, but didn't exist.
Yep.
I have never heard of that before. That's actually really, I mean, they technically exist because the lineage lives on through the Alouettes. Okay.
Yep.
I get that. But I've never and somebody out there in these comments between all 4 platforms this is streaming to right now, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I have never heard of a team winning a championship and then had to relocate during the offseason before the start of the next season. That's crazy. That's wild. And that's cool. The coolest part is you actually have a shirt. It was for that. Did you attend the game or something, or did you just find it online?
No, it was on Royal Retros. They sell old logos from defunct teams. They sell T-shirts with logos from defunct teams or defunct logos. And I happened to see that shirt. I'm getting that shirt.
That's fire. I like that. That was definitely cool. And Dylan says special teams are special players, brother, and they really are. I mean, they can make or break your game right there. And depending whether it's kickoffs or punts or field goals or whatever it is, and then to, defend the play as well after you've made it. That's the key there too. So definitely a big statement there by him. And yeah, don't remember hearing a team do that. I don't, man. That was a huge history lesson right there. You just threw out to those of us who, maybe aren't as consistent with watching CFL as we are with the NFL during the fall. And, and understandably so, because there's so many different sports going on. Right now you got the NBA finals, which we'll talk about that in the In-Or-Out Sports Debate tonight. Ding! Then you've got, see, I'm adopting it, Kyle. I'm sorry. Okay, you said it enough in front of me. Now I'm saying it here. And then you got baseball. Baseball I'm big into as well. Not only, participating out there in the streets, but also watching it. So this has been different for me, this spring and now into the summer, if consistently watching football every week. However, I'm not complaining. I'm in loving watching this every single week between what we've gotten for competition out of the UFL with the merger between the USFL and the XFL, in which we'll get to that championship game in a second. But here with the CFL, they have not been disappointing me these past 2 weeks. And to get that history lesson from you is definitely a pretty cool one to hear out here. And with that being said, let's go ahead and take this to the UFL Championship before we get too much further on. So here with the UFL Championship, that took place this past Sunday. But if you had the choice between watching the Saskatchewan Roughriders versus the Hamilton Tiger Cats and this UFL Championship between the Birmingham Stallions, who were the defending champions of the USFL for the past 2 years.
2-time defending champion.
Yep, and going for their 3rd consecutive championship, but now with a newly established league. But it still counts. Going to contend for it against the San Antonio Brahmas, who had a terrible year the year before, being led by Hines Ward, who was the head coach. And then changes were made during the offseason. You bring in Wade Phillips, that led this team to a very respectable 7-3 season. And the Birmingham Stallions, who were 9-1 during the regular season, that one loss came against the San Antonio Brahmas. So this game, yes. So this game right here, had a lot of hype on it about the fact that, one, you have a team in the Brahmas who came back from having a terrible year the year before, and then serving that big, fat, steaky team right here during the regular season. And the hype was, could they do it again? And the question is no. They got their tails whooped. Really, really bad. They're losing 25-0. And the Brahmas were technically the home team in this championship game because they had the advantage by beating the Stallions in that one game they played during the regular season. But the numbers here, and I promise, I was pretty spot on with these stats that I've sent you in the slate. This is not a typo. This is just how bad this game was overall. I mean, Adrian Martinez, only 98 passing yards and a touchdown, along with 11 carries for 52 yards and 2 touchdowns. He put 3 touchdowns, between on the ground and in the air. But the numbers weren't really as great as what we're accustomed to seeing from him throughout the entirety of this 2024 season. Ricky Person on the running game, though, 13 carries for 102 yards. That's the type of production I've been praising and talking about. If you have a running back that can do something like that, you're pretty much guaranteed to win the game. And it's very rare you see a running back on 13 carries get 102 yards and the team loses. That they've got to have a really terrible defense if that's the case, or just be bad on special teams, or your quarterback's throwing interceptions. That's the only way that you're losing a game if you have a running back it's running for 102 yards in a game. Marlon Williams was the highlight of the receivers, which is not really much to praise about, as he had pretty much a little over a third of what the total passing yards were by Adrian Martinez. 4 receptions on 36 yards on the day. The Stallions defense, played another big part, as they have been dominant all season long, and why they were 9-1 heading into the playoffs. Technically 10-1 coming into this game by winning the USFL Championship the week prior. But what really kind of handed things over was the lackluster play by a team that has not been known for playing lackluster this season in the San Antonio Brahmas, with Chase Garbers throwing 162 passing yards, no touchdowns, but no turnovers either, with no passing turnovers or anything. 3 carries on the ground for 7 yards. He tried, but he just couldn't extend the plays with his legs. Anthony McFarland, running back for the team, who has definitely had a solid year and why they're at where they're at to be in this predicament with the UFL Championship Game. 9 carries, 32 yards, 6 receptions for 38 yards. The sad part about that is the almost combined 100 yards on the day was the highlight for the San Antonio Brahmas, as their leading receiver had 5 receptions, 1 less than him, a few more yards at 49 yards, that being Calvin Turner. Really didn't do enough to get by, with the Brahmas defense absolutely royally sucking, with 0 sacks or forced turnovers like the team we talked about in the CFL. The biggest stat line of the day, though, thing I just skipped over in the slate that we're going to talk about right now. If you guys are new to the program and haven't seen this over the course of this UFL season, you know that Cole and I have nicknamed a super fan of the Dallas Cowboys as Tyrone Alizé McDummy. Okay. But the crazy thing was that the San Antonio Brahmas have a player in a tight end named Alizé Mack. So throughout the entirety of this season, I've been calling this man Tyrone Alizé Mack Dummy, okay? Throwing the emphasis on the Mac and not the Mick, okay?
Yep.
So today, in this game, as we review the UFL Championship, he lets us down once again like a Tyrone Alizé Mack Dummy would. 2 receptions for 1 yard. Absolutely sucking yet again. When you put all that in perspective, is Tyrone Alizé Mack Dummy the reason why this team lost this mother-fathering game? Or was there obviously a lot more miscues with this Brahmas team facing a really, really stacked Birmingham Stallions team that they had no chance of winning this game?
I have a question for Alizé Mack. Are you still them Brahmas?
Delete! 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 Delete!
I rest my case.
But in all seriousness, though, I mean, I watched a little bit of the highlights. You know, I'll be honest. I haven't watched too much UFL, if any UFL at all. And part of the reason why is because they canceled my New Jersey Generals. My New Jersey Generals got canceled again. No, look, I remember the old. Look, I'm an old man. All right, let's face it. I'm an old guy. Not that old, but I'm an older guy. I remember the old USFL with the New Jersey Generals and the DJT owned New Jersey Generals who had Herschel Walker, Doug Flutie, my favorite quarterback of all time, Doug Flutie. That's my dude. And Maurice Carthen. That team that could have contended with the best of the NFL, along with the Philadelphia Stars. Those two in the 1985 season. But then XFL and USFL, they decided to merge, and they canceled my beloved New Jersey Generals again. So I hold a little bit of a grudge to The Rock and Redbird Capital for canceling my guys again. But looking at the highlights, you know, I looked at the stat sheet. Let's just put it this way: the Stallions. Appropriately enough, I'm wearing the shirt that says Stallions today. Look, Stallions made the Brahmas look like a bunch of dumpster pelicans. Look at the one stat. Ricky Person, 102 yards rushing. They got worn down on both sides of the ball. 4 turnovers. Over 100 yards rushing by one individual. They got straight beat down. They got turned into a bunch of dumpster pelicans.
They did. I mean, looking at them, they were the number one dumpster pelican with the biggest beak in the top right-hand corner, standing on top of that Food Lion bag on the right-hand side. Like, they were absolutely sucking in that game. Stallions rolled up into town and said, "We are going to serve you that big fat steak in it."
Let me talk to you.
Yeah.
And when it comes to this situation right here, you just have to put it all into one giant clump. And the fact that Birmingham Stallions, they were them. Okay. They were them. Okay. I mean, to some people, it might not make sense, but you are definitely not up to code with what's going on out here in these streets with communication. They were them. Okay. They have been showing up and shelling out for the past few years and doing their jobs. And they, have got a stacked defense that does not mess around. And it definitely proved that the offense of the Brahmas could not establish anything at all on all 3 phases of the game. The Stallions didn't even have to have an explosive offense on that day to even contend with the Brahmas because of how well their defense was holding the Brahmas and to not getting any type of execution done. Mm-hmm. The Brahmas deserved to be there. I think had the Michigan Panthers beat them, no, because that would be the Stallions. I think had the Battlehawks beat the Brahmas the week prior, this would have been a little bit of a closer contest and a little bit more of an interesting game because of the way the Battlehawks have played the past few seasons since, coming into the XFL and what they've established with A.J. McCarron and Hakeem Butler, who was the MVP of the UFL this year. He was the best player he got that MVP award, but didn't get a chance to showcase it on the highest stage. And when they played the Stallions this year, if I remember right, it was during a time where A.J. McCarron was hurt, and they had the backup quarterback in there. So you can only do but so much. And I think the game was pretty close then. It was one of their closer games the Stallions had of the season. And most of the games throughout the first 6 to 7 weeks, they were blowing teams out. I mean, by 20 to 25 to 30 points victories. So a game like this is not out of the norm for the Stallions to win by that much. What is out of the norm is that they shut the team completely out, for one, and that the other team was the best team in the XFL division, and that being the Brahmas, who beat the reigning best team in the XFL, in my opinion, even though the Defenders went to the championship game the year prior. I think they lucked their way in there, and that's coming from somebody who's a fan of DC sports-based teams. I'm just telling you straight up, like they lucked their way into there, and then got thumped by the Arlington Renegades.
Mm-hmm.
This situation right here, the St. Louis Battlehawks, for the second consecutive year after having a decent year, kind of get screwed during their playoff run because they have players that are banged up a little bit, just can't do enough to get over the hump, but then face a team that they didn't even have to face in the XFL the entirety of their existence. It just happens to be the USFL team, a team that may arguably now we can say are the Chiefs of the UFL, the way they're playing, because they've won 3 consecutive championships, and that's what the Chiefs are going for if they can get to that point this upcoming season. And we might be able to say the Birmingham Stallions, if they get enough of a history built in the UFL, could be what we were talking about earlier for the CFL, could be the type of the New England Patriots for the UFL as far as the way they've been playing.
I got a couple of questions about the UFL, and it's just two questions that have kind of popped in my mind over the last couple hours since you sent the rundown. Do you think they need to go to smaller, non-traditional NFL markets to survive? And do you think that St. Louis will be the permanent home of the UFL Championship?
As of right now, I think so, because you got to look at the turnout that's coming there. I mean, it's a toss-up between them and Michigan as far as the attendance the attendance numbers that are there each and every week. St. Louis is number one, and mainly because they don't have a professional team in St. Louis anymore, which since the Rams moved to LA, they've been starving for a team from what it sounds like and from what they're producing with the numbers and attendance over there. But they should have thought about that before they were producing lackluster numbers, and the reason why the Rams moved to LA to begin with. So now looking at the UFL and the fact that the amount of people who showed up for that championship game, for one, because of the market that it's in, the size of the stadium that they were using, the benefits that come from that. I think for right now, until the league grows more, until it's able to establish itself more, maybe over the course of the next 10 years, if everything continues to go right, then we could see it, move to different areas for different championship games moving forward. They've got to continue to build a fan base for not only the UFL itself, but for the 8 individual teams that are in the league too. And that's something that they're going to struggle with a little bit, because some of these markets that we've got teams in, like you've got 3 teams in Texas, which to me is pretty stupid, right? Because you've got the Houston Roughnecks, you've got the Arlington Renegades, and then you got the San Antonio Brahmas, and they're all within a relatively short distance of each other, in my opinion, to where they're not spread out enough to where you can really appreciate the fact of having 3 teams relatively close on that side of the U.S. I would have put them in a couple other states. I think for travel expenses and for maybe marketing and other things to help the internal brand of the UFL, I think that they put them there strategically for that stat alone to help maybe save $1 or $2. But saving $1 or $2 is going to help them in the long run. I think merging with the USFL definitely helps, because we now have a team that we're seeing out of Birmingham that we wouldn't have seen had we not had that merger. The way that things were spread out before. I know you miss your Generals. I know you're a little bit turned by that. I get it. All right.
I'm a little salty. Yeah.
yeah. And Cool McCain feels the same way about the Philadelphia Soul. Okay. We talked about that. And he's saying that I'm only just as hype about it because the DC Defenders are still there, but they absolutely suck this week. So I can't, not this week, but this season. So I cannot get, but so excited about the team. I like what I saw with the fact of you had USFL teams coming in, merging with XFL teams, and we had some decent competition throughout 10 games this year. There were not many games like what we saw in the UFL Championship, because had we seen one-sided games like that all year long, I would definitely tell you there's no chance that the UFL lasts too long for one, but doesn't go anywhere else besides St. Louis for championship games. But for two, because of how diverse things are within that league, it may take a little bit to gain more of a fan base. But I think that we're going to see that championship game move from different cities like we do with the NFL at some point once it gets more popular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I remember from the old USFL, it worked in spring football. Worked in markets that were non-traditional. It worked in New Jersey because, well, they had a lot of financial backing with a billionaire, and plus you get the big names coming in like a Herschel Walker. The fact that 2 consecutive Heisman Trophy winners joined that, actually 3, excuse me. Mike Rozier joined Pittsburgh, Herschel Walker and Doug Flutie joined New Jersey. So you had 3 consecutive Heisman Trophy winners from the onset join the league. Kind of told you, hey, this league's for real. Back in the day, but it worked in non-traditional markets. It worked in Memphis. It worked in Birmingham, especially. And now with Birmingham winning 3 straight titles, yeah, definitely, it's good. They're gonna keep rolling with that combo unless Skip Holtz decided to go to the NFL. I don't know if he's going to, but I think he's had so much success in spring, he's going to stay put. But I think if they put it in markets that are non-traditional football markets or non-traditional NFL markets, it'll work. Orlando worked in the alliance of American football. Don't forget Steve Spurrier had that team they won the league until the league got canceled. That team was the Orlando Apollos was awesome. That was an awesome team. They were a good team until they pulled the plug on that season in 2019. You can put a team in San Antonio works. San Diego works. They love their football out in California. I think if spring football moves to markets that don't get the NFL, you're going to see a bigger turnout. But like you said, having 3 teams in Texas helped because the travel expenses weren't as high. It's all going to depend on what Redbird Capital and Dwayne Johnson do. But I think having the TV deals helps with Fox and with ESPN. That definitely helps. Sports betting is going to help too. So I think if they want to look at traditional markets, non-traditional NFL markets, I say go for it. Go for it. Let the league grow. Let the talent develop. Because who knows, the NFL or CFL are going to look for guys, auxiliary guys, in spring football. Training camp's coming soon. NFL training camp starts in a couple weeks. Bring in a guy from the UFL to maybe come in as a auxiliary guy, a practice or potential practice squad guy. They'll get paid. I don't know what the pay structure is in the UFL, but let the standouts stand out, and maybe the NFL takes a look at them.
The UFL's type of like the way they pay them. I mean, there's tiers, right? You know, certain positions are gonna get paid a little bit more, but it's not as much of a jump like other professional sports, including the NFL, where your quarterback's making like the type of money we're going to talk about with Trevor Lawrence here in a little bit. It's kind of like it's like a 9-to-5 job in a way. Like you sign up for some type of salary-based job, and that's literally what this is. Because even AJ McCarron talking about in his post-game interview from the XFL Championship game the week prior talked about, you know, he didn't sign up for this for the money. He signed up for this to show his kids, you know, how to battle through stuff and play football and do things that you don't necessarily want to do to have success. And this is exactly it. This is a springboard to potentially get to the NFL and make that money, but you got to bet on yourself first. Yep. And that's what this league's all about, coming from the Rock. But with that said, we've done a great job covering the CFL and the UFL Championship game. We're going to go ahead and take our first commercial break, but when we come back, we've got some things to talk about in the Gridiron Scoop. We'll see you guys here in a couple minutes.
All right, let's go. We got trips, right? At 42, 989 on 2. Ready? Break.
We're just getting started. Total Football Talk will return right after this. Whether it's news, The largest egg producer finds bird flu in chickens at a Texas plant. Weather. Devastating tornadoes rip through the heart of the United States. Inspiration. A breast cancer survivor completed the journey of chemotherapy, and now begins a future one of matrimony or sports. Michael Jordan is shown on a photo with Diddy. LeBron James has a video extolling the virtues of a Diddy party. This has been yet another Beating a Dead Horse presentation. We got you covered. BS3 Network proudly presents The Morning Shift with Cole Johnson. Live every weekday morning beginning April 29th at 8 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Central. Hey, Eagles fan. Join my man Cool McCain and a host of others as they break down every single game, every single week in an objective manner, and also from a fan's perspective as well. Remember, this cast feels just like you. Nobody likes you. And you don't care. Fly, Eagles, fly. Eagles Elite Podcast. Every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern on YouTube and other podcast outlets.
Everything Boston. I love you morons. You Kids from the Block, New Edition,
Dear whatever the law firm is. Sincerely, the U.S. Supreme Court.
Ben Affleck, Matt Damon. Go yourself again, Jason Whitlock.
That is my favorite commercial. Come on. Welcome back to Total Football Talk, your source for hard-hitting gridiron action. We are back for episode 42. Special guest Ryan McCarthy is in the house. Before we get back to him, we will talk about Show Me the Money. The Jaguars make quarterback Trevor Lawrence the highest paid player in NFL history, and we will definitely get to that here momentarily. But welcome back to the program from the commercial break. Myself and special guest Ryan McCarthy, as stated, are here to bring you the 42nd consecutive week of Total Football Talk. And with that being said, we have to take this unit into the gridiron scoop and talk about some topics we have at bay for that one. First and foremost, NFL legend Thomas Edward Patrick Brady II makes his Fox debut during the 2024 UFL Championship. Was this the beginning of a great career transition, or do you really see him as a better candidate for that role than Greg Olsen?
You know, like I mentioned in the last segment, I didn't tune into the UFL Championship because I don't have Fox. First of all, you know, Tom Brady may sound a little boring. He's definitely not Tony Romo. I know some people hold a grudge against Tony Romo. He's a little more low key, but I think having the fact that you have one of the greatest quarterback, arguably the greatest quarterback of this generation, being in the booth and replacing, I like Greg Olsen. I think he's a great color commentator. But the fact that you're paying a guy $35 million a season, for 10 years. For 10 years, you want him to be excellent. You want him to show his expertise, and the fact that you have a guy who won 7 rings. I had to correct myself there.
More than any team in the NFL, yeah.
Yeah, people forget that he won with the Buccaneers as well. But you have a guy who has won 7 championships. You're paying him all this money. Heck yeah, I want somebody like that in my booth as a good candidate. And I think he'll do all right. I think he'll do a couple bumps in the road, at least initially. but I think he'll do a solid job.
I agree. I think, with the way if he approaches this like he approached the game of football itself when he was playing, then the sky's the limit for TB12. And it sucks for Greg Olson because Greg was doing such a great job as their top, color commentator over there for Fox. And now TB12 comes in and, he's had a year off from playing, has been able to do different things. The roast of Tom Brady was great. The Hall of Fame ceremony with the New England Patriots. I'm not a fan of that team, but I did watch it because 60,000 people showed up to it. So, it's pretty impressive. That's the most ever for some type of team's individual Hall of Fame ceremony. So that was great in itself to see that happen for him. It was great to see, him give back to the game of football in a different league that's still a professional league that he might not necessarily been able to do, but because he's contracted by Fox Sports to be a commentator for football and primarily the NFL, it's nice to see that they were able to work that in because it's big for the players playing in the UFL, which is, like we can say in like the CFL too, it's kind of like the minor leagues of football, right? CFL, AAA, I would say UFL, like in between a double A and a triple A, if there was like a double A, triple A combined. I don't know. It's hard to explain in that, but that's the way I see it in my mind. So for Tom Brady, who is considered the greatest quarterback of all time in the NFL, you can argue it all you want to, but that's what they're saying. And that's what my opinion is too. And I'm not even a fan of the guy, just a fan of this production, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you think about that, him being at the UFL Championship and presenting the MVP award, that's a big confidence boost to whoever wins that award in that moment before you even get to that. So you're thinking to yourself, I want to, ball out the best I can because I'm going to get the opportunity to receive that trophy. And that moment happened this past Sunday when the Stallions wiped the floor with the San Antonio Brahmas. And for, Thomas Edward Patrick Brady II to step up and do the right thing for the players involved here. I think it was pretty cool to see that. And I would have to say I agree with you there. But something that Sick Diggy said a minute ago I want to touch up on before you get to that is regarding the rock at Ryan McCarthy. Is that what you think? Because what you said when it came to that UFL Championship game, he says it doesn't matter what you think. And for that, for Sick, I'm going to give you this.
You should know your role and shut your mouth.
Not you. I'm just adding the rock to the story, okay? Just don't get upset.
I'm
talking about Sick, not you. You're good.
Oh, okay. I'm good. I'm Gucci. As the kids would say.
But you were about to touch up with what I was talking about there for Tom Brady and the UFL Championship for a second, but I threw that out there real quick.
No, it's quite all right. There's some color commentators make the mistake of jumping into the booth too soon. And I think it actually benefited. I think it's going to benefit Tom Brady that he takes a year off, learns like any quarterback gets, like any player gets drafted. They take a year to learn the position and then jump into it. And I think it's going to serve Tom Brady well. Now, I don't know if it's because of all the mess with the divorce with Gisele Bundchen, or however you pronounce her name.
Bundchen, I think.
Sure, why not?
I guess. But
I think, but maybe you had to deal with that first. But I think a year outside the booth to learn the position, learn the television trade is going to do him such a benefit rather than a disservice.
I agree with that too. I mean, the one thing is the roast of Tom Brady affected, her outside of it because her and the karate instructor apparently broke up after that roast. That's some news that came out this past week. It has nothing to do with Total Football Talk. It's everything to do with TB12 and his past situations. But good for TB12. That's karma right there. The fact that you still got to come back and play one more year of football. It didn't work out, but you still did what we'll look back on decades from now and say that was pretty remarkable that you not only retired, I mean, that was only for 40 days, but you came back. The team itself was not good all the way around, but he was still at a pretty good level on his way out at 45, which is remarkable. And, he gave a lot of praise to, Alex Guerrero for help keeping his arm intact because had they not worked together, and he mentioned this in that Hall of Fame speech, there would be no way he would have played until 45. That arm would have been toast a long time ago. So looking at this Tom Brady situation with the UFL Championship, I think it's huge because, if you have somebody who worked that hard to play for that long and they're presenting you the championship, it's like the closest thing I can think of by handing the keys over to the game and giving you your opportunity, being on that platform with him. If you can have a picture of yourself receiving a major championship MVP with the greatest quarterback of all time in professional football history, that is a huge, and I mean huge moment to be a part of, and definitely a great memory for that person today.
Yeah, he'll be.
My apologies.
That's all right. I was going to say, hopefully he's whoever was I don't know who the MVP of the game was, but hopefully he'll be sitting in his hot tub like Uncle Rico with his soulmate, looking at that picture and saying, "I got a picture with the greatest of all time."
Uncle Rico. When you look at the UFL's MVP, this is basically what I can say to sum up the game, because you heard those lackluster numbers that I was giving you out earlier, right? While quarterback Adrian Martinez's final stat line didn't hit the heights of some of the other games this season, the newly minted league MVP capped off this great season as the 2024 UFL Championship Game MVP, thanks to 150 total yards of offense and 3 total touchdowns, 2 rushing and 1 passing. He was one who had 98 passing yards, but had another 50-some yards on the ground to combine, and they gave him the MVP. Even though I feel like with the way their defensives played this year, that one of the defensive players could have arguably got that defensive MVP, got the MVP of the game. Now, I think the last time in the NFL, if I remember right, was the 2002 Super Bowl. A defensive player won an MVP.
Dexter Jackson, I believe.
Dexter Jackson. Yep. I was going to it wasn't Derek Brooks. For some reason, I had Derek Brooks in my head, but no, I believe it was Dexter Jackson. And that, if I'm wrong, tell me out here in the comments, you guys. But I feel like that was the last time an MVP was chosen on the defensive side. For our next topic here, one we won't spend much time on, but I thought it was funny to bring it up just to see what your opinion was. NFL legend Bill Belichick dating 24-year-old former cheerleader Jordan Hudson. From the full hoodie to the pom-poms, is this man going through a midlife crisis?
Yes. Look, he's got all the time in the world to do all that stuff now. I mean, if I was his age, I'd be a little bit more dignified. But hey, good. This is a trend these days. That's how it goes these days. I mean, when he was coaching, when he brought Tom Brady into the lineup in 2001, she was probably still in her Huggies. So This is a little weird, but hey, it's, I guess, good for you, man.
Yeah, I guess he's balling out here in these streets. And last on the docket for the Gridiron Scoop, Chiefs defensive lineman Isaiah Buggs arrested for domestic violence burglary in Tuscaloosa, Florida. Do you believe that this situation and others, including wide receiver Rashee Rice, will hinder the team's chances of defending their current championship streak?
Guys, I know you got a lot of time on your hands during the offseason, but this is not the way to spend your offseason. That being said, I don't think it will. Look at who they drafted, who their first round draft pick was. This awesome receiver who could, if Rashee Rice goes to jail, you got somebody who could play immediately. This is what good coaches do. That if you're not playing up to their standards anymore, or you do something where you get in trouble, where you wind up in jail, it could be for multiple years, like Rashee Rice and possibly Isaiah Buggs. You can find players to fill in that role, and Andy Reid has been good at that for the last how many years he's been Chiefs coach. So I don't think it would be. I don't think these 2 arrests will hurt their chances very much.
And I would agree with that because, I mean, they've had some other, players in the past that haven't behaved the best out there in the streets, but they have found a way to not let that affect them in-house. Now, going for a third championship is going to be tough.
Yeah.
But I wonder if they don't make it, if this will be brought up at some point, saying, the miscues during the offseason didn't really help set them up for success. I just figured it was a question that came to mind that I would ask you in this moment, but definitely answered very well. And before we go any further, it's time to get to our grand champ of the week, where we pick our MVP of the week.
Total football talk.
Where my dogs at? It's time that we pick our MVP of the week, whether it's an entire team or a player who did well, whether it's on or off the field in the game of football. And for that, I'll let Ryan go first with his choice for the MVP of the week.
So my MVP of this week is the defensive unit for the Ottawa Redblacks. As we touched upon in the first segment, 3 sacks, 2 interceptions, and a brilliant pass breakup to save the game-winning touchdown in their big win in the week 2 win, their first of the season, against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. I arguably it was an upset because of the way that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers have been the Winnipeg Blue Bombers for the last 6-7 years. But the Redblacks defense, they did what they had to do to win, and they had 3 sacks, they forced 2 turnovers, that big pass breakup towards the end of the game. They did what they could to win this game, and they did not send their fans home sad. So that's my dog of the week. That's my MVP this week, is the entire unit of the Ottawa Redblacks defense.
It's a really good choice. I mean, they had that week 1 bye, and had, some time to scout their opponents before they came into this week 2 contest, their first game of the season. And, that's a really good choice there. I think I'm going to have to take this to a team that I've already mentioned, and this may be a biased pick, but I really like the Saskatchewan Roughriders, okay? I can't say it enough. And there was one person on this team that made a big, big impact, and one we talked about earlier, and that was on special teams, their kicker, Brett Lowther. One that Ryan McCarthy has coined Brett Mother, Father, and Lowther. I guess that's how I might have butchered the name. But hey, Low, motherfucker, Mother, Father, and or something like that. We could say that. But right here, right now, 4 field goals on the day. This team won by 3 points in the Roughriders. Had they not done that, had they not trusted their kicker to kick 4 field goals in this game, I don't know if they would be 2-0 right now. They might be 1-1. I mean, this is a team that has struggled in recent years and is starting off this year pretty hot. Now, there have been teams that have had 2-0 starts, and then the bottom falls out, and then they finish the year like 6-12, like other teams we had mentioned in the past. But right here, right now, there's something special about this team I can see, and I hope I'm not wrong. I hope we don't look back in like 2 months after we got a good portion of this season, through the midway point, and this team's like 2-8 at that point. Okay, that would be terrible if that happens and they lose like 8 straight games, but I don't see it happen. They've got a pretty good balance between offense, defense, and special teams from what I'm seeing in these games, and I hope that they can continue to carry that momentum going forward. But we'll have to see. Now, normally after this, we would go to a commercial break, but due to time restraints and because, this show is now picked up by a couple radio waves that I have to keep it around a 2-hour mark, we're going to keep rocking and rolling. Take this into the next segment as a result of that, and we're going to go ahead and take that into the featured attractions. And here are the featured attractions. We're going to talk about some things that, I felt was like the main focal points of the outside of the recap of the game's topics. And, we got 3 topics to talk about in this one. And the first one being the NFL docks Falcons 2025 5th-round pick and fines the club $250,000 for violating the anti-tampering policy. Do you believe that this punishment was sufficient for the violations this offseason?
Well, Kirk Cousins, that's what happens when you open your big mouth. Yeah, this is sufficient. This is sufficient punishment. As you lose a 5th round pick, that impacts your depth, and yeah, you get $250,000. It's a drop in the bucket for these NFL teams. So I don't know where this money goes. Does it go towards the Players Association, alumni? I don't know where it goes to. But yeah, this is sufficient punishment. I think this costing your team a draft pick. You get a draft pick. It costs you some money. We learn from this experience and we move on.
I like it. There's definitely a good take on that. And, I'd have to agree with it too. And again, had he not put his foot in his mouth, like you said, things be a little bit different. But, it is what it is. Technology is. So the way things are nowadays, you're going to find out there's a miscue somewhere in there, whether he opened his mouth or not. That's just the way the NFL investigates stuff. There's not much that slips through the cracks anymore. Used to, but not now. And especially in situations like this, they are big on. They do not want any type of tampering with individuals who are currently under a deal or an expiring deal that hasn't quite hit that free agent point yet. And that's what happened in this case, where there was some communication about it. And I remember some rumors in the past before he was a free agent of in people within the Falcons organization discussing things with his wife, who is from the Atlanta area, who grew up there, because they were basically trying to play into the roots of the fact that your family's there and all this other stuff with, childcare and everything like that. They were playing into that. That was rumors that were going on out here in these streets. I didn't take it too seriously until we started hearing this all swirl around in the background when, young man, well, I'll say in a nice way, opened his mouth. So right here, right now, I would say that the punishment was sufficient, and I agree with you wholeheartedly on that one.
Hey, who's giving them the business?
Now, on our next topic here, NFL Insider suggests that Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers is on an ayahuasca trip. Do you think that current drama surrounding this team and their quarterback will affect them this upcoming season? Someone who has been a fan of this Jets team for a very long time, since he practically was crapping his Huggies, and picked this team as his team based on the fact that Kermit the Frog is his favorite character from Sesame Street, and the color green was he in the Jets. Does all that have an effect on what your thoughts are right here and now based on the questions at bay?
Well, for the record, I was potty trained at that point, so it's all good there.
I was trying to throw some extra character to the story.
Hey, that's okay. That's okay. I hate this. I hate this story, and it's not for the reasons you think. It's not a story. The players have come out and said, yeah, we're okay with him taking it's mini camp, 3-day mini camp. If he misses 2 days, no big deal. We're okay with it. He's earned his stripes. But for an NFL insider to say, oh, he's on an ayahuasca trip, it just shows you that, look, we're in media. This is technically media. This is opinion media we're in. But for an NFL insider, a guy for someone who claims that, yeah, I have the inside scoop on why he was out, get the jump to conclusions, Matt, because that's what you're doing here. You're jumping to conclusions as to what his absence was. Now, there's some speculation of whether or not this absence was excused, whether it was unexcused. I don't think Robert Saleh helped in that cause, but to suggest that the reason why Aaron Rodgers was absent because he was on an ayahuasca trip, it's just dumb journalism. It's just clickbait. It's lack of integrity. It's just jumping to conclusions. And this is why a lot of times when it comes to, at least with the New York media, especially, and now with the insider, with this quote unquote insider, national media insider, this is why people don't like the media.
Yes.
And it includes myself too. I was a journalism major, and I've taught to just kind of sniff out what's just clickbait and what's actual news. This is clickbaity bollocks, and it should be treated as such.
Very well said. I agree with that. And, you had said that when we were in the green room where you had a rant you were going to go on, and you just did. And I had that pretty much in mind. And when the gears were spinning upstairs, last night, writing this thing out, I had a feeling this might be where you went with it. And you met and exceeded my expectations on it because, again, This is an example of New York media literally being New York media and twisting stories. And it's the type of drama that comes from this, that if the teams really are paying attention, I feel like has an impact on the way the team performs out here. Because yes, Saleh didn't help in the fact of saying that it was unexcused when he was talking to the media last week, and the fact that he wasn't there for veteran minicamp. But looking at all this here, just because he's not there doesn't necessarily mean he's on an ayahuasca trip. And if I remember correctly, the times where he has discussed going on these ayahuasca trips are much before June. It's not this late into the off season where we're only, 7-8 weeks away from or less from preseason football, to where you got to start getting yourself ready and in shape to go in there at any moment. I don't think he's on an ayahuasca trip. If he was, he would have done that back in April, or even at latest by last month.
Yeah. And plus also to put a finer point on it, but it also gives Tyrod Taylor, it gives Jordan Travis some reps with the first team, because if Aaron Rodgers does go down this year, knock on wood, say a prayer that it doesn't 4 plays in, it gives Tyrod Taylor an opportunity to work with the first team, to learn how this offense works. It benefits. I think it just benefits the Jets more. It doesn't this doesn't serve a purpose for a 40-year-old quarterback to be in a 3-day minicamp. Last year they didn't have the 3-day minicamp because they were playing in the Hall of Fame game. They put all their energy towards that instead. So this only benefits the backup quarterback in this situation, and it also helps a quarterback who was drafted to learn this offense, learn how this offense works, learn the schemes, and see what he does with it too.
Absolutely. And it's going to be interesting to see how things pan out in this situation right here. We got to see more than 4 plays out of him this year. We need to see more than 4 weeks. We need to see an entire season. And I would like to see Aaron Rodgers ended on a good note, because one cool thing about his weekly segments with Pat McAfee during the NFL season is we get to see a little bit more of the insider's perspective of the quarterback position and how the quarterback thinks and what they're seeing, right? That's, even back when he was with the Packers and now doing it as part of the Jets, not everybody agrees with what he says or does or his opinions, right? But you got to admit, it's definitely helped us get a understanding for their view of the game. We had our own expectations and the way we already saw the game itself, but to have that type of insider perspective, kind of like we'll get when we watch Fox, sports upcoming this fall, it's the same thing with Tom Brady, or when Tony Romo calls stuff for CBS. When you have somebody that's willing to give you that type of perspective on the inside of the game, it's huge. And he has made a difference on that program with Pat McAfee. It's now time that he makes a difference with this New York Jets team and gets you guys to some type of prominence for the first time in a very long time.
Yeah, plus the bigger unexcused absence is Hassan Reddick. That's the bigger unexcused absence, not Aaron Rodgers. Hassan Reddick not being there is a little concerning. I understand where he's coming from. But at the same time, you got to be there. You got to be a part of this. You got to learn this defense. You got to be a part of it.
Hands down. Hands down, because they need his help. That's why they brought him in to begin with. So, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's hypocritical that we're kind of saying for one and the other one is more of a bigger deal. But Aaron Rodgers, 40 years old. Okay. He's the oldest player in the NFL officially now. Okay. You look it up. He is the oldest player in the NFL. So if it's June, early June, like the first, second week of June, and you're missing a mini camp, if I'm not making that big of a deal, if you're missing a few days when you've been to everything else before that in this offseason, the man was busting his tail to try to come back last year. If the Jets had a chance around Christmas for the last 2 to 3 weeks and play not fully 100%, but got close enough to where he could potentially play, and even admitted it to where had they been in a position at that point, he was going to get on that field, which is very commendable considering what happened in week 1. All right. Yeah. So if you have somebody that tough as nails to bust their tail for you, and they were doing that last season, this is, to me, where they let him, whether it wasn't said right by Saleh or not, I feel like this is kind of like a reward. Like, you get a little bit of time off here because of what you did in the previous season. You did everything you could to come back, but our team as a whole was just not good enough for you to make that jump back in that early. So I feel like this might have been like kind of like, all right, we're even now. You don't have to come to this mini camp session right here between him and ownership or him and the general manager. Maybe Saleh wasn't on the right page. But if this team does not do well this season, but Aaron Rodgers does, and he wants to come back for a third year, I guarantee you Saleh won't be there in year 3 during Aaron Rodgers' tenure. And a lot of it will have to do with certain things that have come out of his mouth where he is kind of painted some misconceptions, unintentionally or not. Okay. This situation is part of that right here.
Mm-hmm.
So, all that being said, it'll be interesting to see how things pan out for this team going forward. We got to talk about another team and their contract that just gave to their quarterback.
Hey, who's giving them the business?
Rookie mistake. I clicked the wrong button, but forgive me out here in these streams. Been doing a lot the past few days. Give me a break. But right here, right now, the Jaguars make quarterback Trevor Lawrence the highest paid player in NFL history with 5-year, $275 million contract extension. Will this move make or break the team's future? And does his current achievements warrant the benefits of this type of deal?
Well, Jacksonville, there you go again, resetting the market for every position. You did it with Christian Kirk with the wide receiver market, and now you're doing it again with the quarterback market. I would say for the limited list of achievements, I think what Jacksonville is doing is that they're taking a risk, what seems like a calculated risk, giving him this much money now because they know look, his rookie season, we all know what happened there. It was a learning curve. Second season brings the team all the way back, beats them to the playoffs, and also leads them to the biggest playoff win in NFL in the wild card round in NFL history. Hey, Brandon Staley, how you doing? Last year we kind of saw what happened. They got exposed, but Trevor Lawrence is a talented guy. He's a talented quarterback. It's his 4th year. You knew this is going to come down the road with his rookie deal ending. Now they say, okay, we trust you. We trust what you're going to do with this offense. We trust that you'll lead us to a Super Bowl championship. We're going to give you a big pay raise. Now go out and make it happen. Let's see a title out of you. I think it's part of it is it's not so much the current achievements that warrant, it's the future achievements that they think he could bring to the team.
Very, very well said. And I was thinking that was going to be the direction that you were going to go in with this statement right here. I think Kyle Nash and others will agree with you. I mean, he's been in the top 5 in passing statistics, over the past few years since coming into the league. He had that one rough year when, Urban Meyer was the head coach, but it's been shown since then with a former quarterback who had success as the Eagles head coach winning a Super Bowl and has been, as a backup quarterback, he worked under multiple Hall of Famers. And he learned game of football not only through their eyes, but also through coaches like Andy Reid and others' eyes that helped mold him into the head coach he is. And that head coach is helping mold Trevor Lawrence into being the best quarterback that he can be, coming from a pretty good and prestigious, college career, high school career, and what he had done leading up to when he got drafted into the NFL. He was just let down in his rookie year by a coach who had no business being in the NFL, and especially why, when you see the things that he did to get himself booted from that contract, that team, and that opportunity to be in the NFL as a head coach. So Doug Peterson's doing the right thing by Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence's numbers have been reflecting that, and they've been improving each year under Doug Peterson, or at least remaining consistent to how good the numbers were the previous year. So with all that being said, like you had just pointed out, they're banking on the future of him not only continuing to improve, but to keep this team at a contendable pace to where they have a chance to compete for a Lombardi trophy at some point. And they're not too far off from that.
And the division's going to be tougher next year too. CJ, you saw what happened with Houston last year. CJ Stroud bringing the Texans within 1.5 of going to the AFC Championship game after they won only 2 games the year before. You got Anthony Richardson, who's going to be playing his first full season. Hopefully, he doesn't have another injury like he did last season with the Colts, and the Colts are going to be good again. And we can make fun of that. We can talk about the Texans taking a step back a little bit, but Will Levis has shown flashes of brilliance in his young career so far. So this is going to be, it's a literal arms race in the AFC South, and I think him getting the bag, so to speak, is going to make him. It's going to make him say, okay, yeah, they believe in me. Now it's just up to me to perform.
Very well said. It's going to be interesting to see how things pan out for this team, and especially with this type of contract. It's a lot of money you're going to throw at them, and I think $148 million is guaranteed of it. That's a lot of money to guarantee. So hopefully the results continue to pay off. But so far, I believe he's worth it when it comes to this right here.
Hey, who's giving them the business?
With that being said, it's time to go to my favorite segment of the week. Oh, yeah! Snowflake of the week. And with that being said, it's time for you to make your choice and who you felt was the worst player or team in this past week's action in football.
Oh, the Calgary Stampeders.
Mm-hmm.
You had a chance to go to 2-0 this week, and your defense didn't show up. No turnovers, no sacks, no chance of going 2-0. Played soft, like a snowflake would. You played soft, SAWFT, soft. And if you're going to make the playoffs this year again for the 20th consecutive year, I say 19th consecutive year because 2020 was ixnayed. Defense has got to step up. And Jake Meyer can only do so much on the offensive side of the ball. Your defense has got to show up, and you got a chance next week to do so. Let's see how you do. Actually, no, you're off this week, so you got some time to think about what's gonna. You got some time to think about and make some adjustments to see what your defense can do from here on out. But if you don't pick things up quickly, you might be out of the playoffs this year. Pick it up, Snowflake.
Absolutely. You got to turn it around. I mean, like you were just talking about it earlier, Brett the Hitman Hart's team playing like dumpster Pelicans right now. And like you said, that is a reflection of how things are going within that locker room. And, I'm not going to go with the team, but I'm going to go with a player that has hit the snowflake of the week for my pick several times in the UFL season. It's the last time I'm going to be able to talk about the UFL for a little bit, so I'm going to make the best of it. I'm going to come out here with fireworks ablazing, especially when we talk about the man who has been dubbed with this name right here.
Delete!
And that is Tyrone Alizé McDummy of the San Antonio Brahmas. 2 receptions, 1 yard on 2 targets. That's a half a yard per reception. How do you suck that bad? How have you sucked this bad this entire year? How has this team gotten this far when their starting tight end has had numbers like this for several weeks? Why are they even still throwing him the ball when he's had stats like this for several weeks? Now, is this the main reason why the Brahmas lost the game? No. The overall team absolutely sucked in comparison to the defense of the Stallions that held them to 0 points and a lackluster production of numbers throughout the entirety of that game. But when you're starting tight end, one who has a name that most people would think was pretty cool, Alizé Mac, until you played like a Mac dummy, and I have to bring you up here on the Snowflake of the Week. 2 receptions, 1 yard, no production, along with no production from your offense, warrants me to pick you as the Snowflake of the Week, and that I just did. McCarthy approves.
Are you still them Brahmas?
Are you still him, bruv? I'm going to have to bring that back next year, especially if he comes back to the team. But based on what Cole was saying in reaction to the last time I picked him as a Snowflake of the Week, he wants him to retire. and I don't think we'll see him with the Brahmas next year, especially with this type of lackluster production. But with that being said, we have one more thing we have to get to before we close things out, and that is the 2-minute drill, where we give you a preview of the upcoming week in the CFL action for week 3. And here for the CFL's week 3 action, like Ryan had stated earlier, the bye week for the team is the Calgary Stampeders, who are currently sitting at 1-1, playing a little dumpster Pelican-esque, but they got some time to think about it this week, like he said. The first game is on Thursday, it's actually the 24th or the 20th. I need to change that date, but a little late now. We could just go with it on the fly. The Ottawa Redblacks, who are 1-0 after their first game this previous week, travel to Montreal, take on the Alouettes, who are 2-0. Which one of these two teams will be undefeated at the end of this game there, Ryan?
Well, before I give a prediction, I'm going to say this is the game of the week right here. This is the CFL game of the week right here, because the way Ottawa played last week and the way Montreal's played the first 2 weeks, I think Montreal's getting the banner race on this night. So that being said, it's going to be a very competitive game, but I'm going to go with my Montreal, not to be a homer here, but go with the Montreal Alouettes, just because of based on how their defenses have been playing, and their offense is solid. It's a solid offense, and I'm going with Montreal.
Okay. I'd have to agree with you on this. I mean, the Redblacks did come out and play pretty solid in their first game of the year. We got to look at the team that they were playing in that time frame too. I mean, you're playing a team in the Winnipeg Blue Bombers who'd already lost the week before. We've already talked about the fact that they are in some type of huge slump to start the year. I don't think if they would have played a team to the caliber of what they're playing this week with the Alouettes, had it been this flip-flop and they were playing them for the first game, I think they'd be 0-1 heading into their second game here. So I'm going to have to go with the Alouettes based on the fact that they are the defending champions and the fact that they did come out strong the first 2 weeks. I'm going to have to side with you on this one and say I'm going with this team winning this game right here.
Hey, who's giving them the business?
In the following game that we have on Friday the 21st, the Lions out of British Columbia, the BC Lions, who are 1-1, travel to said dumpster Pelican team's home field at Winnipeg, take on the Blue Bombers Friday the 21st at 8:30 p.m. on TSN, on Eastern Time. Now, with that being said, you think the Lions improve to 2-1, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers fall to 0-3, or will Winnipeg get their heads out of their rear ends and actually get a win this weekend or this Friday?
If Kenny the King Lawler and Brady Oliveira come back this week, give me the Bombers.
Okay.
But if they're not playing this week, give me the Lions. Give me the Lions if they're not playing.
So it's probably looking like there's a good chance they're not coming back, with them being banged up a little bit. And this early in the season, it's not like you need to rush them back already, because even if you lose to 0-3, you still can come back, even though the chances are a little bit more slim of you doing something, with that to actually go far in the playoffs. But I'm going to go with the Lions too and agree with you here, based on the fact that I'm not really liking what I'm seeing out of the Blue Bombers the first 2 weeks. And even if those guys come back, I'm still a little questionable on if they can actually pull it off against a decent team that they're playing in the Lions right here and right now.
Hey, who's giving them the business?
That being said, let's move to Saturday. We got the Edmonton Elkamos, as we had earlier in this show, who are 0-2, traveling to Toronto to take on the Argonauts, who are 1-0, also coming off a week 2 bye. This Saturday, the 22nd at 7:00 p.m. Eastern Time. Who do you have in this one? Do the Elkamos get out of the hole and improve to 1-2, or will the Argonauts be undefeated after this game again?
Against BC in week 1, Toronto looked like, even without Chad Kelly, they looked like they weren't missing a beat. And now they just released Sean Oakman, who was one of their best pass rushers last season. That's a curious case there. I don't know the reason, but Toronto is, even though the Elks are improved, they're an improved team. They're not losing games by 20. They're not losing games by 30. They're only losing games by single digits. Toronto's still ahead above them. So I'm going to go with the Toronto Argonauts in this game.
Okay. I can't disagree with that. I like what I saw in week 1. I'm going to have to go with Toronto as well.
Hey, who's giving them the business?
And here for our last game this Sunday, we have the Hamilton Tiger Cats, who are 0-2, traveling to Saskatchewan to take the Roughriders on at their stadium there, and they play at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern time on Sunday, the 23rd. Do you see the Roughriders, the team that is my favorite so far in the league, getting to 3-0, or will the Tiger Cats get their first win of the season?
Well, the game's at Mosaic Stadium in Regina, and it's the home opener for your Saskatchewan Roughriders, Drew. That crowd's gonna be rocking, and I think that's gonna be the 13th man in Saskatchewan. They're known as the 13th man. The crowd is, so that crowd's gonna be rocking. They're gonna be excited for their Roughriders. I'm gonna say go with the Roughriders in this game.
I agree with you 1,000%. With all that being said, and also based on what I'm seeing, if they can continue to elevate and especially improve the running game results, if for some reason that regresses or stays the same, I won't be surprised if they lose, because the Tiger Cats have been playing okay considering that they are 0-2, and especially in this past game, the week prior, and they had played the same team the week prior. That's something you don't see that often either. They're just flip-flopping from home stadium to home stadium.
Yep.
They played last week, and we saw a 33-30 game. So if this can be just like last week, a shootout, I think the Roughriders will definitely take it again. But also the Tiger Cats seeing them 2 weeks in a row could be an advantage. So that, it could go either way in that case, especially if they play the type of game they played in the previous week.
Hey, who's giving them the business?
And with that being said, let's go ahead and take this to the post game and give them our final thoughts as we round out the episode.
As long as it's long. That's great. I love it.
With everything we've talked about in today's episode that we have in mind, when it comes to the post game, is there anything else you want to touch up on, leave the fans with as we roll on out of the show?
Yeah, I'll touch up on the Aaron Rodgers and the media situation. Does Aaron Rodgers say some questionable things? Absolutely. Is he a little bit conspiratorial? Sure. But is it any of your business what he does for 2 days outside of minicamp that causes him to miss 2 games? No, it's nobody's business. And there's no use speculating, because it's just going to turn into even more of a drain hole that you go down towards. And look, the times that he missed minicamp were the times that he won league MVP. And I think one of those times he also won a Super Bowl. So if he misses a couple of days, if he misses 2 of the 3 days of minicamp, we're talking minicamp, okay? It shouldn't matter. Let the guy live his life. Let him do his thing. Contrary to what to the mainstream, it's none of our business what he does for those two days outside of minicamp. Leave the dude alone.
I like that take right there. You got to back off, especially the ones out there, giving fake news. I just wanted to touch up on it for one and see what your thoughts were on it, because, people are, blatantly saying that he's on an ayahuasca trip when we have no proof that he is. But for my post game, I basically want to, thank all of you for tuning in today. We've had a decent amount of people watching, considering that we started the show an hour and a half, 2 hours early than normal. We normally are just now getting ramped up into the show, going from 4 to 6. But as I mentioned earlier in the show, Ryan coming in, doing a great job filling in for Cole today, and, helping me get this thing going to where we can produce a 42nd consecutive week of Total Football Talk with factual-based things that we were able to bring up to you for one. Talking about CFL, UFL, NFL, all sorts of different things here for one. Again, you can see Cole tonight. If you miss Cole on this program today, you can see him tonight on the In or Out Sports Debate with Kyle Nash. Kyle Nash has been begging for this for a while, and he gets his wish tonight as we were able to make it happen. Most importantly, we're able to make it happen because, one, Ryan came in here, was able to, sub in for Cole, which we're going to have to get the 3 of us on here at some point, talk some football action. That will be another great episode. We'll have to set up during the CFL season and make it happen at some point. And it'll be a little bit later in the day too, so it might help you out on a regular day with your regular work schedule if that is the case. Or come in for hour 2 if you couldn't quite make it during the first one. We'll make it happen. We'll talk during, after outside of this. But, looking back at football, the UFL season, now that it's come to a close, Very exciting year for me for as far as the past 12 weeks, because literally it all went pretty fast between the regular season and 10 weeks. Then you had the USFL and the XFL Championship in week 11, and then in the week 12 we have the UFL Championship. It literally went by in a breeze, and we talked about so much UFL in that span that I still have not seen another network, whether it's my brothers out here in these streams or ESPN or any major platforms, carry and discuss that league like we did. I'm damn proud of it. Okay. I'm proud of, what Cole and I have built here in 42 weeks. Is it, have we met our goals and growth with it? Totally. No. I mean, of course, we got other things we want to achieve with it. That'll all come in time. But it's all because of you guys out there watching between all these platforms today, liking and sharing it, and helping those with the post live views that definitely make it, to where it's motivating for us to keep pumping this thing out once every week. So thank you to the people who tune into this regularly. Thank you again to Ryan for coming in and helping me make this happen today, to where we can still stay on track with the show. And that's been episode 42 of Total Football Talk with Ryan McCarthy here today. We've only got one more thing left to do. And got to look at one fire outro that Cole Johnson has produced for us. Make sure you go, if you're watching this on YouTube, look up No Credentials Required. Subscribe to my man's channel. Watch them Tuesday nights still. Tuesday nights on.
This week's going to be Wednesday. So
Wednesday?
Right now we're kind of up in the air what we're going to talk about. We could do a movie. We're going to do a summer movie review series right now. So it could be that. We're also have a big interview possibly in the works as well. So we'll figure it out. Hopefully within the next 24 hours, I'll have an answer on that interview. The interview falls through. That's okay. We'll go with a movie review on Wednesday at 8:05. And Drew, I also want to thank you for inviting me on, talking some CFL. I love the CFL. I don't get a chance to talk about it that much. I know credentials required, but give me the platform, the chance to talk to you today. Hopefully we have myself and with you and Cole in the future. But I always want to thank you for letting me come on the show today and talk some CFL as well as some other subjects.
Yeah, you're welcome, brother. Anytime. You absolutely crushed it and knocked it out the park. And like I said, we'll have to figure it out with our schedules. As long as you could work it in. We might have to make you like the CFL insider and come in here and talk with us at certain points throughout this season. It is a long season, but I understand work schedules, your own podcasting plans, other different things out there, as well as the things you do in the field by covering things, in the media too. We all got to respect these other schedules, which is why, when I was telling you earlier, I wasn't even going to ask Cole to try to pull off a 3 show in a day. That's like, it's insanity to try to even pull that off, but to even think that one could do that, I was like, no, I'm not even going to expect that or ask. So thank you very much again for coming in and filling that role and filling it very well. I mean, I can't think of anybody else that would have been able to come in here and talk CFL with me like they did. And even things throughout the conversation, I learned that I didn't even know, like the U.S. teams in the league that were only there for a couple of years, because I was very little at that point. I was before the age of 10, so I'm not going to remember that. As far as that in depth, at least, I barely remembered the Commanders, now what their name is, winning the Super Bowl in 1992, in January of 92. I remember being there and the celebration parts afterwards, but I don't remember anything about the game until I watched highlights many years later. So, but here and now on episode 42 of Total Football Talk, it's been an absolute honor, joy, and privilege, and look forward to the next time. And we've only got one more thing left to do to those of you tuning in between the 4 platforms we're streaming to right now. And that's look at one awesome outro by the man, myth, and legend Cole Johnson, which you can find him on the flowcode.com/page/host Cole Johnson. If you want to check him out when you get a chance, do so, as well as myself. I got to get on that flow code. There's way too many things popping up for you to be checking out for me right here. But if you care, you'll do it. Subscribe, share, and be a part of the awesomeness out here in these streams. For Ryan McCarthy, I am Drew Willingham. Everyone, as always, stay safe out here in these streets.